Once again, I want to let you know that you all are in a safe space with me. Even though this space is virtual, all of you are in this beautiful bubble. We all are connected together at this moment. And as we speak, as we learn, as we know, we will discover things about our own life that will help us to reach a certain kind of solution, if not the full solution. Okay. Some of you who can be on video, you can come on video. That way it helps me to look at your face and you can look at me. And that way what happens is there is a connection that is established. We are able to resonate. We are able to regulate better, right? Because we are going through distancing right now, but that distancing is physical. It's not actually social. So socially, of course, we are connected. We are talking to each other now. We are looking at each other. So it helps us to resonate and regulate better with our bodies and minds, right? So like before, I have prepared a presentation for you all. Let me pull out that presentation first of all, and then we can go ahead with the class. Right, here we go. We have the presentation. Now, I hope all of you are able to see it. Okay, so today's class is called The Silent Echoes, Abortion from the Lens of Systemic Medicine, right? Now, by now, many of you who have already attended few of my classes, you already know that I work in the field of intergenerational trauma or attachment trauma, traumas that have happened to us either in childhood or when we were young or in our mother's womb or even before we were born, traumas that belong to our grandfather, our grandmother, or great-grandfather, great-grandmother. So we don't individually exist as people, as even our problems are not individual problems. Our problems always have an extension that takes us back to either our mom or our dad or our grandfather or our grandmother. What I mean to say that our problems don't exist as isolated islands. Our problems are not isolated islands. Our problems belong to a greater system, to a greater family, to a greater group. And the roots of those problems also are located in the different parts of the system, in the different parts of the family. Okay, that's the reason why we call it systemic, because no problem is ever individual or isolated in nature, right? I also want to let you know that we are working with technology right now. So we may experience glitches or the connection may drop. So please don't worry about it. We can always come back and gather again if anything of that sort happens. So when we talk about abortion, right? When we are talking about a life that is being asked to step down, that is being asked to leave, that is being asked to go, right? We are not looking at abortion in at least systemic work. In systemic medicine, we are not looking at abortion from a moral point of view. We're not saying that one should do it and one should not do it. Not that it is right or wrong, not that it is good or bad, right? Illegal or legal. We are not looking at those ways of justifying why one should do it, one should not do it, right? But we are simply looking at certain consequences. We are looking at the effects that are left behind as a result of this action, as a result of the abortion, the effects and the consequences that are left behind. And the system experiences it. The mother experiences it. The father experiences it. The children who are supposed to come later experiences it, right? Or we might be experiencing it because there are abortions even in our ancestral lineage, right? So ideally, in the most ideal world, a mother would not want to give up her child. A mother wouldn't want the child to give up its life, right? But then there are many other factors, right, which go beyond the concept and the idea of right and wrong. There could be environmental pressure. She might be staying in an environment, in a home, where she is not allowed to bear the child for whatever reason. She could be a victim of abuse, and she cannot bear the child. She cannot give birth to the child. The child could be out of a wedlock, and maybe in a certain kind of society or culture, it's not possible to have the child. The mother could be, well, I mean, it could belong to a married woman as well, but at the same point of time, there could be financial pressure in the family. And other members of the family, and including the father, maybe they wouldn't want the mother to go ahead with the child, and abortion could be the result of that, right? Sometimes a child, when in the initial ultrasound clinical reports, what happens is the child may have an anomaly, right? And the mother and father may decide to abort the child because when the child comes into the world, there could be a major defect, right? These are reasons which we, people like I or you or any of us, actually, we don't have the right to judge them as right or wrong, okay? But yes, we all can observe and witness that there are certain effects which will eventually happen as a result of the abortion. In therapy work, in intergenerational trauma work, when I do therapy with clients, when I teach students, my participants, we see myriad numbers and kinds of effects of abortion in a family system. We will look at these different effects. There is a reason why I am doing this class. It's not just because it's a complex topic or it's a taboo topic that a lot of people don't talk about, but also because it's such a common topic. It's something that appears in therapy again and again and again. And many times because we don't have knowledge about this topic, we don't have information about this topic. So what happens is we end up missing that point, right? While doing the diagnosis and a therapy of the case, if we have no knowledge about this particular topic, then certain common areas can be missed. Our client may not go fully resolved. The problem may not be fully eliminated. So knowing this topic is important, not only for us and some of you who are training to be therapists, but also all the other people who may at least take this information and utilize it either in your own life. Doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man, by the way. Utilize it in your own life and also help maybe others who are close to you, about whose history you may already know, right? So what happens? What happens as a result of abortion? I have shown three different areas. And these are major areas that abortion affects. Okay, these are major areas where abortion casts a deep impact. Okay, we have to remember that abortion, even if when I say the words, when I put it out in a sentence, it may feel harsh, it may feel cruel, and the reasons for doing the abortion could be absolutely and completely valid. It still is asking a child to step down on its life, asking a child to give up its life, and in a way, the parent or the mother is telling the child that I need you to give up this life because of XYZ reason. And those XYZ reasons could be completely valid. I am again not discounting them. They could be valid, but it is still asking a child, taking away life from a child. It's akin to killing a child, right? Having all the reasons in place. So there will be effects of that act. One primary effect is on the existing relationship, the relationship from which the child appears, the child comes into being, right? The mother becomes pregnant because of a relationship, whatever kind of relationship that is, whether it's a good one, abusive one, bad one, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's a loving relationship, it could be any kind of relationship. But yes, it is a relationship as a result of which the child comes into existence, okay? Secondly, the other effect is on the future children. That let's assume that this relationship is the relationship of two people, or maybe two partners, or maybe husband and wife, and there are future children also comes in. So there will be effect on the future children as well. And the last kind of effect is on the entire system. How does abortion show up systemically in the entire family? How can abortion run down generations after generations and cast its impact 3 generations, 4 generations, 5 generations down the line, right? So we need to learn that. Right now, I know the chat window is not open, but keep your questions there. I will open the chat window later. Okay, so let's look at the first one. What was the first one I said? The first one is on the relationship. Okay, there are many kinds of relationships, as I said, and I explain this topic even more profoundly in the course that I do, the systemic medicine course. But here in this masterclass, because I have limited time, I'm only going to explore a relationship where, let's say, a man is with a woman is with a man could be married to the woman, and the woman could be married to the man, right? So let's look at that relationship. There are many other kinds of relationship also, by the way, and there is an effect there. So here, what happens is, in this relationship, when the child is asked to step down, when the child is asked to give up its life, right? When the parents decide that the child mustn't survive, then there is a price that the child is paying, right? There's a heavy, huge price that is being paid by the child. What is this price? This price is the life of the child, right? So whatever the reasons are, we want to be financially stable and then want to have a child, that's a good reason. We want to plan family later, that's another good reason probably for the mother and father. Or we don't want to get married and we want to explore our relationship even more, that is another reason. So whatever the reason is, whatever the justification is, there is a price paid by the child, okay? And that price is the price of life. Now, whenever something like this happens, the people who are letting the child give up its life and give that price, the effect of this price leads to a very, very, very heavy guilt on the mother and the father. And when I talk about guilt, I'm not talking about conscious guilt. It's not that I did something wrong and I feel guilty and I can feel it. It's not even that conscious guilt that I'm talking about. This guilt is a universal kind of guilt. If you go to my YouTube, you will find a video on guilt, and I talk about universal guilt, guilt that is unconscious, guilt that is way larger than you can feel or you can express, because it's not individual or personal guilt. This guilt expands and goes beyond the personal and is a universal form of guilt. So both the mother, more the mother and the father, experience this heavy guilt because there is something, an energy, a complex body of emotion the consummation that is between them, that dies along with the child. So when the child dies, that body of emotion, that consummation, that union that was formed also begins to dissolve. And guilt takes that place of that void. A void is created because, well, of course, someone has died. And guilt takes that place. And this guilt begins to separate the couple. So often, always, this relationship either does not survive, okay, because the guilt is causing them to rift apart and the void is showing up between them larger. And even if the relationship stays, even if people stays, there is always going to be this rift. There's always going to be this distance. It is as if the mother and the father is saying that because you do not survive and you don't stay, we will create this space between us out of this guilt that we asked you to step down on your life, right? And let's say the relationship does not survive, and the woman goes her way and the man goes his way. And then the woman goes into some other relationship. It follows even there. How? It follows even there. This guilt is very huge. It's universal. It's not personal. It follows even there. I was working with someone a couple of years back, and she represented with not being able to sustain relationships. And she said, I have had 5 relationships, and every time I don't know what exactly happens, but there is a rift that gets created. We end up fighting, and then I move out of that relationship, and then I go to the next. And then even there is another rift and quarrel that happens over something silly or over something invisible, and it doesn't stay there. And then I go out, and that way there are 5 relationships, and I'm not able to figure out why is it so difficult to sustain relationship with a man. And then I go ahead and I ask her, did you have anyone before those 5 people? And then she says, yes, I did. I said, why didn't you talk to me about it? And she says, well, because I didn't want to reveal that right in the first session itself. It was our first session. And then I said, what happened there? There is something that happened that you don't want to talk about because you actually have 6 relationships, not 5. And then she said that I was pregnant with this man, with this man's child, and then I had to abort the child. And that's when I kept that information, and I said that, okay, in the next time we meet, I am going to leave it here, but the next time we meet, I want you to observe. I want you to observe a family constellation session with me. I don't want to give you ideas that just because you aborted the child, you could not sustain those 5 relationships, or you can't have a relationship. I want you to witness a family constellation. And then we did a family constellation for her. By the way, for people who are new in this class and who do not know what a family constellation is, you can go and visit my YouTube, and there are numerous videos on what a family constellation is. I've spoken about there profusely. So I did a family constellation with her. And during the family constellation, we brought in 5 people to represent her 5 lovers. And we brought in one person, strange. I mean, it's a stranger. It's not someone she knew, to represent her first lover. And all those 5 people could not look at her. They looked at the first lover. And the first lover looked at her and was in tears. The representative of the first lover, it's not the real person, the representative of the first lover looked at her and was in tears. And then he kept looking down as if there was someone lying down. And that's when she understood that the lying down place is the place of the child. That her relationship with this first person went fractured and it split apart because there was a trauma there. Again, we are not talking about what is right, what is wrong, whether she did right by aborting the child, she did wrong by aborting the child, or maybe she was a bad woman because she aborted the child and then she moved on to other lovers. No, that's not what we are pointing out. We are showing that there is a trauma there, irrespective of the validity of the reason. And the trauma needed to be addressed so that she could honor that life. And her first boyfriend could honor that life, and they could honor that relationship, because there was something invisible because of which the relationship went apart. And only then all the other 5 people could actually look at her, right? So sometimes we are not able to honor these experiences because there is so much of shame, so much of guilt about it. And we may not be able to address it. We may not want to address it because addressing it brings up so much of grief. And grief is processed very differently by men and women, by the way. Most men, they turn to look at they just look away and they don't attend to the grief, and they don't see it because they don't have an agency to look at it and to process it, so they rather look away. Instead, the woman takes everything and goes into her inner world and absorbs all of that and goes into her shell. And that itself is a very distancing act, because the man goes away and the woman sinks in, right? So that's how it affects a relationship and upcoming relationships as well. Let's look at the second kind of effect, right? So there are real physiological changes in the body that happens as a result of the abortion, right? When the abortion happens, the body naturally is in a state of stress, right? Because something that was connected to the universe of the body begins to dissolve and move out. So the body naturally goes into a state of stress because something is dying inside the body, right? So the uterine tissues, the womb tissues, the fallopian tube, all of these tissues are going through the stress. And all of the cells in these tissues are going to remember the nature of this stress. So there is a cellular memory attached to the uterus, attached to the fallopian tube, attached to the ovaries, attached to the entire uterine wall, right? And when the next child comes, let's say the next child comes a year later, 2 years later, or when we become financially stable, that's when the next child comes. The child is going, because the child is also connected to the universe of the body of the entire, of the whole mother. So the child is going to absorb all those stress and will also recognize who lived in this womb before me. Okay, who lived in this womb before me? The child is going to recognize. So the child somatically, not cognitively, not through its brain, somatically remembers the inhabitant of that womb, previous inhabitant. It's like someone stayed on rent in this house, and I can feel their energy, as I enter this house and I take this new house. I know who was on rent. I know those people were not clean. They did not keep the sink clean. I know that the bathroom was kept unclean. Well, I'm aware when I enter a house that I'm taking up on rent, and I know how the previous inhabitants were, right? So similarly, in the womb, this new inhabitant will remember the previous inhabitant, okay? So as a result of which, not only the child inherits all those stress, but also this child is now going to also feel the guilt of survival. This child is going to feel all that guilt that mom felt. This child will feel all that guilt that it will feel as a result of it surviving and not its predecessor, not its brother or sister surviving. And therefore, this guilt leads to a kind of unconscious loyalty to this upcoming child towards the dead child. So in a way, unconsciously, this new child's life is compromised. So there's a built-in compromise that happens to this new child. So maybe this new child suffers through depression in order to reflect, I am also going to die. This new child goes through unconscious, multiple accidents, keeps on falling into accidents after accidents because the child is somehow mirroring the death of its sibling. The child sinks into self-sabotaging and self-harming behavior because, again, it's mirroring the death of its sibling. The child feels angry and rejecting of the mother because it feels angry about the other child, the sibling, being killed. So there can be many, many, many symptoms. The child can continue to fall sick and sick and sick and go sink into illness because, well, it's again trying to prove its loyalty to the previous inhabitant, the sibling. So there can be many ways by which the surviving child can express the guilt that comes in as a result of its survival because the other one did not survive. Okay, I'm going to tell you of a case here. Before the case, let me go and tell you the case first, and then I will talk about the sentences. So here is a case of severe depression. Okay, so here is a female client who could be, I think she was around 23 when she came to me. And I noticed two very important symptoms in her. One was she kept on saying that how she's disgusted. She's disgusted to live in a world of men. And at the same time, she had this deep, deep anger. And on top of this anger was this huge layer of grief. And then I spoke to her about her childhood. She was 23. I talked to her about how she was when she was 18 or 17 or 15, even 8. And we could find nothing. Zero. Her childhood was fine. She was doing okay. She just did not like men. She didn't like her father. And apart from that, we could just not figure out anything else. So then we decided to do a constellation. So I called in the mother and I said that, listen, I don't know what's wrong. And at that time, I was not very trained in the area of intergenerational trauma. As you all may know, that constellation, family constellation, is not the only way of working with inherited family trauma. There are many other ways that I teach in my course, the systemic medicine course. But during that time, I was not trained in these methods. So I only knew how to do a family constellation. So I did a family constellation. I called her mother and I asked her to come down. We did a family constellation by bringing in some more people who did not know her case. In family constellation, we don't tell people about the case. Rather, we put representatives of the case. And then when we were doing the constellation, 3 people from the constellation went and they lay down on the ground, on the floor, as if they were representing dead people. And the mother immediately moved towards them, and the father immediately moved away from them. I'm not talking of the real mother and real father. I'm talking about representative of the mother and representative of the father. And there was a representative of the client as well. So the client was sitting and watching with me along with the mother, right there. They were watching. And then the client's representative says, well, I want to go and lie down with them. All these dead people who are lying down, I want to go and lie down with them. Up until then, I had no information about this case. So I actually looked at the mother and I whispered to her that, what is this happening? I mean, you have to tell me. You didn't tell me the history till now. And then she said that, yeah, there are actually 3 abortions. And these happened because my husband wanted me to not bear these children. And this is it. And I aborted them. And then I said, okay, fine, we work with this. I didn't have this information before, but now that I have it, I work with it. So she goes, the client's representative wants to go and lie down with them. And there is a visible anger on her face about her father, right? Because she's carrying her mother's anger. which mother is unable to express because she's a different kind of woman. Maybe she feels guilty to express about it, right? And then we had to do a lot of therapeutic work in that session itself, in the family constellation itself, so that she could observe that these are her siblings, and she was repeating her mother's pain by going through the depression, by, in a way, following her siblings, her dead siblings. And we had to do a few rituals and some healing movements so that she could let go of that pain and anger and honor the lives of her siblings. And only then, after around a month or two after that constellation, she began to come back to her natural state. She was able to feel life inside her. She was able to carry on with her life without all these unconscious traumas pulling her life force energy into a dark place. She was able to go ahead into her life. So this is one way how abortion can affect the children or the child who survives, right? And the child may, the child who feels the effect of these abortions can say various things to the parents. For example, even if the parents love them, they would say, "You never wanted me. I don't feel like living anymore." Or in a way they are saying, "Dear brother or dear sister, I dim my light for you. I'm guilty. I survived," right? Sometimes a child may completely diminish its light because it doesn't want to live, not because it consciously wants to commit suicide, but because it is in a way merged or entangled with its dead siblings. Or in a way it says, look at the fourth one, the green fourth one. "Dear sister, let me follow you. Let me cut my connection with mom and dad too." Just like this client did, right? Or, "I don't trust my parents," because someone couldn't trust their parents because the parents ended up asking the child to take its life down. So it could not trust the parents, right? So all of these voices by the child are actually either the voice of the dead sibling or it's the suppressed anger from the abortion, right? Now let's come to the interesting part, which is the intergenerational and systemic effects of abortion. So up until now, we covered two parts. One was how abortion affects relationships, existing ones, future ones, how abortion affects children who are about to come, children of the future, child who survives. And the third one now is, what is the systemic effect? What's the systemic effect of abortion? So this is one case that I did once. I had a lot of training because it was a complex case. And I could only solve it because I was very much trained in the systemic medicine. So, so here comes a case of a severe heroin addiction. I'm sure all of you know what's heroin, right? It's a substance, and it's substance abuse. So severe heroin addiction. And it's a young boy around 23, 24 once again. And I asked him that, what happens when you do it? What happens when you don't do it? There is an urge because of which you want to do it, right? How does that urge feel like for you? And of course, he describes his urge to do it. Every week he gets the urge. And I said, yeah, I understand your description, but tell me in one line. Tell me in one line, what is this urge like? And he says, you know what, doctor? I feel that I don't want to live. I feel I can just kill myself by doing this. I said, that's it. And I said that let's look, where is this drive, this very strong drive of, I feel I just want to kill myself, that you say with such conviction, where does it come from? Let's look at it. So now, in this case, this boy, let's call him John, okay? Let's call him John. So John, when we look at John's history, we see that John's mother had 2 miscarriages and 1 abortion, okay? And one of the important part is, while John was being born, before John was born, the mother has already painful history of painful pregnancy because of which the miscarriages happen. and they start after the abortion, okay? And she also has PCOS already. So that makes me thinking that I know that there is miscarriage, abortion, and John could be somehow reflecting the trauma of these miscarriages and abortions. And by the way, miscarriage is different from abortion, by the way. I have a different class on that already. It's not abortion. So in John's case, I'm thinking that, well, John could be somehow repeating the traumas, but there is something in the mother that I need to look at, because she already has history of painful pregnancy. There is PCOS. There is something there that I'm missing out. So I go beyond John's mother, and we figure out that John's mother's mother, meaning John's grandmother, dies of uterine cancer. Okay, she dies of uterine cancer. And that validates my hypothesis that there is something that has got to do with the womb. There is something that has got to do with the womb. And then suddenly I get to know, because I also go ahead and work with John's mother, not only John, I get to know that, well, this woman who dies of uterine cancer, okay, this woman who dies of uterine cancer, her mother had 7 children aborted. And how do we get to know that there were 7 children aborted? Because when she dies, before she dies, she writes a sort of letter about her life, right? And some people discover it. And she talks about her husband. And of course, the relationship is a difficult one, somehow verging on abuse, even if it's a husband, okay? So all these traumas, these 7 children trauma, which this woman goes through in her womb, we can well imagine what happens to that womb. What kind of pain, stress, chemical change, physical change, and of course, it's a huge storm of emotions, right? Hormones are completely misplaced. And then how that travels to the daughter that survives, how that comes to the granddaughter, and how it affects this guy, John, pursuing that feeling of, I want to kill myself. He is not only entangled here, he's entangled with his mother, he's entangled with his grandmother, he's entangled with the children of his great-grandmother, and he's repeating this trauma in a stepwise ladder fashion, right? This is how trauma from abortion runs down systemically. It runs down generation after generation. And I could only examine, understand, and resolve this for John. I took around 2 sessions to resolve this, because I also had to work with John's mother, only because I knew, and only because I got trained in systemic work, in systemic medicine. So when we look at abortion, when we are looking at abortion, we have to understand that there is no one singular solution for resolving through abortion. I mean, I know a lot of you might be right now thinking how to resolve this, how to resolve this, how to work on this. But I want to tell you that there is no one single way of working with the healing. There can be many different ways of doing the healing. And I work on all of these different ways when I teach the systemic medicine course. But one of the important things is grieving or mourning of the child, and genuinely grieving, genuinely mourning is a part of acknowledging. We live in a culture, we live in a society, we live probably in a country where, again, women are not allowed to grieve. Immediately, women are either pushed or motivated to have the next child. So the processing of the grief does not even happen. But then that grieving is essential, because without the grieving, you cannot acknowledge the sacrifice that the child has made for you. So true grieving, genuine grieving, not only helps us to own our guilt without fear, because then we own it, we don't run away from it, but also it allows us to include the child who was asked to pay the heavy price, right? It helps us to include them, because without including them, and if they are excluded, the effect of their exclusion is going to continue in our generation, in our family, in our children, in our relationships, right? So healing can only come from the true grieving or the genuine grieving, so that there is an acknowledgement of the child. Okay, so please remember, as I spoke about exclusion, please remember, exclusion is the root of all entanglements. So we don't exclude, we strive to include. We include the child, we mourn and honor the child, we let them have their true position in their family, because they hold the position, they're never gone, they do hold the position. And there are specific ways of doing these, there are specific steps of doing these. I teach all of this in the systemic medicine course, and people who will come in, you all will get to learn how to go about it, how to include the child, how to include the dead child, not just the aborted, but also the miscarried child, the stillborn child, the child who survives for 2 years, 7 years, 8 years, but then dies. How to include the child, how to mourn and honor the life and fate of these children, and how to give them their true position. Because we may come from a family where children have died prematurely, where children may have been lost, where children may have been miscarried and aborted. And you never know that in your family, if something like that happened, it has an immediate effect on you. It doesn't have to be your child. You don't have to be the person who goes through the miscarriage or abortion, or having a stillborn child, or having a child who goes away, but you could be the child who survived. You could be the grandchild who survived. Your grandmother may have had an abortion. Your great-grandmother may have had a miscarriage or a stillborn, and the effect of that is in you. So a lot of people told me that, we are not coming for this class because this is a class about abortion, but we never went through it. So then I said that, well, you never went through it. It's true. But at the same point of time, did you imagine that you could be the surviving child in the family? And then there are siblings and uncles and aunts who were aborted. Will it not cast an effect on your life? It will. It will. And that's why you need to come to this class, so that you know that you are the one who survives, right? So I'm going to stop my screen, because I want to take you through my upcoming course, okay? As you all, and yeah, I do have portions still to cover. So my upcoming course is called the Systemic Medicine course, Trauma Healing with Family Constellation. As I have spoken about already, that family constellation happens to be one of the ways by which we can do ancestral, intergenerational, and family-centric work, right? So I not only teach family constellation in this course, but many other intergenerational healing modalities. And I do them, and I teach them basically not only for people who are looking to become therapists themselves, but also this program is for people who might be coming for their own healing. We may have people in this course who already were trained in different modalities and now are coming ahead to learn intergenerational trauma work as therapists. Or you may begin as a beginner and coming as a fresh student to this course, or you might be a student of life. You might be coming here because you want to know about yourself. You want to know about your family. You want to heal your ancestral lineage. You want to work on the effects that your ancestral lineage has had on you, right? So the prerequisite of this course is everyone is welcome, right? Everyone is welcome. And in this training, we have 12 live classes by me. Okay. If you go to my website, the systemicmedicinecourse.com, you will see that under the curriculum section, every single class, class 1, class 2, class 3, all are defined. The topics are already written. And you can look at these topics to know what these topics are all about. Every topic is concerned with ancestral, family, intergenerational trauma. Okay. You can also find the link in the chat box. Garima, our course coordinator, she has mentioned the name of the course in the chat box. You can have a look at it, right? So every single class is already defined what the classes are all about, and you can go through all these classes. You can go through all the topics. The most important part is right now, we have our early bird pricing going on, okay? We have our early bird pricing going on, which is 1,35,000 in Indian rupees, okay? And we have just 2 more days until the early bird price gets over, which is the 4th of January. This early bird price, 1.35 lakh, is going to go and change over to 1.5, which is the regular pricing. So before the price goes up, I welcome and invite all of you to come and join this course. This is a course, one of its kind, for the first time in a place like India, where we are working primarily on intergenerational trauma. There is also going to be a certification. My organization, Cognial Healers Academy, in collaboration with international practitioners of holistic medicine and International Institute of Systemic Medicine, is going to offer you a certificate for people who would want to become practitioners, right? And if you, of course, would want to know more about me, you can go in the About Us section. You can read about me. You can read about, oh, you can also go and visit my TEDx talk, by the way. And you can also look at my interview where I talk about how COVID trauma can be intergenerational and how it can pass on generation after generation, right? So that's all about the course. So to let you know that the early bird price goes up on the 4th of January onwards at night. So you have 2 more days till you can register for this course. And by the way, there's another important information I wanted to give you all is number 1, we have EMI options via Razorpay, which means you can pay via your credit card and avail really good EMI options. And we have also listed the contact information of our course coordinator, Garima. She is right here. Garima is here. You can contact her, and her number is already given here. For any information, any query, any questions, she's available. Okay, so I would say get on your horses fast and register for the course. And now I believe I am ready to take questions. But before I take questions, let me go back to my presentation and check whether there is anything about today's class that is left behind to talk about. So give me a moment. Right. So yeah, there was a quote that I wanted to say. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So will our children, right? So we have to bring whatever is in the unconscious into the conscious so that we can work with ourselves and our children. If you wish to write to me, you can write to me at cognialhealersacademy@gmail.com. Okay. And as I said, the number is already there. And the steps to register and heal your lineage is going to my website, www.thesystemicmedicinecourse.com. the systemicmedicinecourse.com, go to the early bird price, select it. And if you're an international participant, you can, of course, speak to Garima and she will give you the PayPal link. Or if you happen to have an Indian bank account, you can go and pay via Razorpay, okay? And that brings us to the end of the class. And of course, I am now ready to take all questions that you may have because we have a lot of participants. It's good if it's good if you can go ahead and type down your questions and I will be able to answer them. I'll be able to answer them. Okay. Okay, there is a question here. Is the trauma carried differently in case of miscarriages? And what if there is a case when any female isn't aware if she had gone through a miscarriage? Okay, so the first part of the question, that if there is a trauma, excuse me, I need some water. If there is a trauma and if it can be different in the case of miscarriage, that's an important question because there is a fundamental difference between miscarriage and abortion. In abortion, the will of the parents or the will of the mother is involved, right? In miscarriage, it's not a murder, it's not a killing, it's not someone else's will over the child, right? We don't know if you can call it the child's will, but at least someone else's will is not involved. So yes, the trauma is to be carried differently. It will show up in different ways, okay? And what if there is a case when any female isn't aware if she has gone through a miscarriage? We have had several such cases where people did not know that there is a miscarriage. But then when you set up a constellation, it shows up. It automatically shows up. For example, I gave you the example of this woman who had 6 lovers, right? All the 5 lovers were looking at the first one. And the first one was looking down like this somewhere, and he was crying. And only I and my client knew that he was looking down at the child. So it showed up. When you do a constellation, it shows up. That's why we do a constellation. Okay. Okay, so I have a question. Hi, I have done 4 levels of family constellation of yours. Is it different? So yes, I was teaching family constellation in 2020, 2021. So in this course, we are not only learning family constellation, but many, many, many other modalities by which we are working with intergenerational and attachment trauma. So it's a completely different course, okay? With family constellation, of course, being a major part of it. So yeah, you have to register freshly for this course. Okay, and of course, you can go and speak to Garima. She will give you all the details. And of course, you can check out our website as well. Okay, next question. I have a pain in leg and spine. Is it because of miscarriage? Although my father's side grandmom died of stillbirth, I didn't feel anything when miscarriage happened too. Well, most of us don't feel anything when it happens because our bodies are either frozen or numbed out, or we block the feeling of sadness. We block out, right? So many of us do that. We block out our sadness. We block out our grief, right? But yes, the fact that you say that my father's side grandmom died of stillbirth, that can be a huge, huge intergenerational trauma that could affect your leg and spine. This can only become visible when we work with you through either a constellation or a traumagram, or when we apply the different techniques of systemic medicine, okay? Any more questions? Any more questions? If anyone has, please go ahead. How does having 10 plus, more than 10 abortions and husband indifferent, the husband is indifferent, can affect the child? It can affect the child heavily. As I explained in my first example, in my second example of how there were 3 abortions, and the child did not like the father, and then she was so depressed and she couldn't move out of her bed, and all she felt was a lot of angst, anguish, and anger in her body, right? Because she was reflecting the feelings of not only her mother, but all of those children who had to give up their life, right? So it is going to have a profound effect, a deep effect on the surviving child. The presentation of that effect can be very different. It can be anxiety. It can present sometimes as addiction. It may present as depression. It may present as, meeting accidents after accidents every single week. So there are many ways by which it can present, but then it is going to show up. If there is, next question, if there is ancestral baggage due to an abortion of a sibling, what is the healing process, or how do you resolve it? Does the mother have to be included in the constellation? If there is an ancestral baggage due to an abortion of a sibling, okay, meaning I and my sibling has died, has been aborted, right? So it has the ability to cast an effect on my life. So when I do a constellation, the constellation will be me, the sibling who has died, and our mother, these 3 people, or maybe our father. And these are the 4 representatives. Mind you, representatives are not real people, not real clients, right? But these are the 4 representatives that we will need to work with if we do a constellation. But we don't need a constellation to heal this. We can heal this by using a traumagram. If you don't know about traumagram, go to my YouTube and see my last masterclass, which is why the best parents are healers. Okay, so there is a masterclass on why the best parents are healers, and I have explained traumagram fully well. Go back and watch it. Okay, there's a question. If someone denies abortion trauma, might they be defensive because they are repressing unconscious guilt? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, because the guilt that we experience as a result of this, as a result of an abortion, is not personal only. It's universal. It extends beyond my personal conscience and ability to feel the guilt. It's beyond me. And therefore, when I repress it, suppress it, when I don't let it come up, then everything around that guilt is going to come up, right? Like how I unknowingly end up sabotaging my relationships, right? That's the way the guilt is presenting and working. I may not be feeling guilty and crying, but then I may end up sabotaging my relationships and not stay in one, okay? In what ways can an abortion affect the father if he was responsible for taking that decision? This is a very interesting question. Very, very interesting question. In what ways can abortion affect the father if he is responsible for taking that decision? If a man unconsciously feels guilty, even if he does not feel guilty, the guilt is going to operate through him because it's universal. So one of the common ways by which a man can represent this guilt is he goes infertile. He becomes scared of commitment and becomes scared of, let's say, being intimate, having sex. He goes through erectile dysfunction, right? He becomes an alcoholic. He goes through addiction because he doesn't want to look at the grief. So he wants to deal with the pain by only withdrawing from it. There can be many ways. What I've explained is just a few of the ways, and I talk about all of these ways in my course, the systemic medicine course. Roxana has a very beautiful comment. She says, Dr. Roxana says that, dear all, I guarantee that working with Dr. Decca will transform your lineage. Dr. Decca invokes powerful science and wise incantations of the highest order to rupture multiple levels of energies of trauma and lack that inform our worldviews and shape our unsupportive life behavioral patterns. Thank you so much, Roxana, for this beautiful, beautiful comment. It's an amazing comment, and yeah, I'm going to preserve this comment. It's so beautiful, right? Right. Ben has also posted a YouTube video. Yes, the YouTube link, my link. Thank you, Ben. Thanks a lot. Chinmay says, thanks for the session. It was very valuable for me. Can you please let me know where can I learn more about the effects of miscarriage? Sadly, we don't have a lot of literature here, right? But yeah, do keep following my videos. I will come up with more and more classes, and you will be able to learn more about them, okay? So, oh, Kashish also says, Kashish happens to be very much like Dr. Roxana. Kashish also happens to be a supervisor, one of our brilliant supervisors in the systemic medicine course. So he says that I echo Dr. Roxana's thoughts. It's been an absolute pleasure, highly revelational, interesting work, transformational to learn systemic work from Dr. Gaurav. He's among the best. Thank you so much, Kashish. Thank you. And Tanaya says, thank you, Dr. Deka. This was quite an insightful session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do look forward to seeing many of you in the systemic medicine course. Please do enroll, come for our course. You will be able to work, heal, and learn a lot, okay? Thank you so very much. If you need any information, please do get in touch with Garima. You all have her number, right? Thank you so much. Thank you.